Hi, and welcome to FM Unscripted, a podcast brought to you by IFMA's FMJ magazine. I'm FMJ editor Jocelyn Kerr, and I'm joined today by Mike Stone. He's a product manager with Infor EAM, and he's one of the authors from the March-April 2018 issue of the magazine. Mike has more than 30 years of experience working with EAM systems. He has led product management, development, and marketing for several commercial EAM systems, and he has applied EAM technology to a variety of industries, including facilities management, oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals, food and beverage, manufacturing, renewable energy, transportation, waste management, and utilities. So thank you, Mike. I want to thank you for joining us today to talk about a condition assessment.
Thank you,
It's great
Jocelyn.
to
I'm
have
glad
you.
to be here.
So, Mike, in your article, you wrote about 3 essential elements of condition assessment. You called inspection, assessment, and estimation. Can you tell us why assessment strategy is particularly important part of this equation?
The assessment strategy is so important. It's a critical part of condition assessment because it provides the framework for the entire effort. It really defines what's to be assessed, what inspections are to be performed and why, as well as what data is to be captured. And it provides the basis for estimating the assessment work such that a schedule can be created.
Mm-hmm.
Give an example. It takes a lot longer to capture about 100 data elements than capturing 20 for an asset.
Right.
So the strategy resolves this. It defines what and how. And then you can use your asset management system to create checklists for the inspections. And most likely, facility managers don't have the resources to do everything at once. So the strategy defines the approach for which assets are to be assessed and when. And finally, the strategy identifies which organizations and types of resources are to be included in the effort. So as you can see, the strategy is extremely important.
Yeah, definitely. And so for large campuses, places that have, say, thousands of assets, this whole assessment process can be a really overwhelming task. So can you talk to our readers and listeners a little bit about some of the technologies and techniques that FMs can use to make it easier?
Sure. Assessing thousands of assets, certainly it can be overwhelming. And again, facility managers most likely don't have the resources to tackle all that at one time. So one of the approaches that we found, it's very useful, is an exercise to just determine what's the most critical to least critical assets. And that points you in the right direction as to where to start. Okay. And you can do that in a variety of ways, including assigning a criticality rating to each asset based on the impact of that asset if it were to fail. Mm-hmm. You can also rank them in terms of function, safety, any other criteria that's valuable to you. My point here is to use some sort of rational criteria and rank your assets, because the asset ranking will give you an ordered list and point you in the right direction so you know where to start. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you've got thousands of assets, you're not going to do them all the time. So you can cut off the list and do this in measured chunks so that you can have milestone schedules, and you can set up work orders for these and manage the process and know how much you've done, how much you have left to do. And, this can be automated. The ranking can be automated. Like with our product, Infor EAM, we provide a user-defined asset ranking capability, and you can use that to capture the ranking criteria, as well as it automatically updates the individual asset records and provides you the lists and things. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but the main thing is to rank the assets so you have an ordered list of what's most important.
Okay, well, good point. And it kind of brings up sort of who are the stakeholders that are involved in making these decisions, right? So when you're talking to FMs and you're helping them put together these assessment projects, how do FMs play a role in the team? Like, how do they know who to include in these kind of meetings?
Well, stakeholders typically include the departments that use, maintain, specify, or even accountable for the assets, and that's normally engineering, operations, facility management, and maintenance, as well as your systems administrator. Now, that may sound a little strange, but they have a role as well. Some organizations even include health, safety, and environmental. The point being that the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, should be represented. Anyone that has some skin in the game for handling and managing these assets ought to be represented. And we really recommend that the team is balanced. And what I mean by that is that every organization has an equal voice, not one is more important than the other. Facility managers can lead the effort by managing the asset ranking exercise, capturing the data, setting up the checklists and managing the data to be captured, and working with the systems administrator to build these inspection checklists to facilitate the actual on-site inspection effort. And then they can coordinate the entire effort and help analyze the results for the presentations, because really, when it comes down to it, the facility managers are going to be the ones that are responsible for presenting these assessments and presenting these capital improvement forecasts and things of that nature. So they need to be integrally involved in the whole process.
Definitely. And you provided a really great case study in your article about a public sector facility that used this assessment data to streamline their capital improvement requests. And like you were just saying, I mean, it's such a vital part of that. Can you talk a little bit about how this data capture and improving that reporting and capture can help support all these, capital improvement requests and forecast planning that goes on?
Sure. That case study was taken from a project one of our partners did with a customer.
Okay.
So, in talking about this, as for the data capture, the closer you can capture the data to the actual inspection effort, the more accurate it's going to be. And we really highly recommend that your inspectors use tablet computers to capture the data as the inspections are done. So it not only improves the accuracy, but it also makes the entire effort more efficient.
Okay.
For capital improvement requests, you normally have to justify them to a board or a council or funding authority of some sort. And those people are not normally close to the situation, but they grant the funding. So first you got to educate them. And one way to do that is providing some solid information on the age of the assets, how much their acquisition costs were, and their condition, current condition, and then contrast that with planned replacement timing and the cost. And then keep in mind that replacement costs are not just the price of buying the asset. It's also including how much it costs to remove the old asset, take it away, install the new one in its place, start it up, and commission it. It also helps if you have an impact statement describing, what are the effects if the asset should fail prior to replacement. And forecast planning. It's much easier when you have the right information, and that includes, again, the acquisition date and the cost, the maintenance cost over time, your repair versus replace analysis, the condition assessment, and then recommendations where you can set up a nice little chart or a nice little spreadsheet that shows you by month and year what those costs were going to be, and so you can project and plan all of your replacement activities.
That is especially important for, the very large organizations, places that have many, perhaps thousands of assets. But what about FMs at smaller facilities? Is there sort of a threshold where an enterprise solution makes sense? If a facility only has a couple of hundred assets, can they still use data? Can you talk a little bit about scope and sort of size in that respect?
The threshold where it makes sense to invest in an enterprise solution, it just varies all over the board. Some want the accuracy and security of a database, and that's to capture and report their maintenance, their contractors and assessments, as well as managing a spare parts inventory and purchasing. When it gets to the point where the facility manager has a hard time keeping up with all the data and their normal responsibilities, it might be time for them to consider the investment. But there's no magical threshold where the investment should be considered. It really is just what makes sense for the operation. For smaller facility operations with, 200 or less or whatever, they can use spreadsheets to manage their assets and spare parts inventory. Some of them even use simple databases such as Access to help them, but that normally requires some sort of IT talent, and that may or may not be available. The main point here is to capture their assets and keep up with their inventory, as well as providing all this information for their owners or funding providers. And the smaller facilities can certainly do that with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And there's some excellent examples of that out there if you need it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good to know. So talk to me a little bit about the future of asset management, right? Are there any technologies or anything that's coming up that FM should be on the lookout for?
Well, we believe that the future of technology and asset management is rapidly unfolding. And as you know, the history of computer science over the past years has just been at the speed of the universe. Facility managers should be looking to take advantage of the Internet of Things. And people have heard of that. This is what we call IoT. This is basically sensors. Sensors are much more affordable now, and their cost is still trending downward. The technology can provide immediate alerts to issues such as pumps and motors starting a failure trend. Maybe it's vibrating, maybe it's overheating, but it's just starting. And these sensors can report readings, and then the analytics can determine what it is. So in addition to the sensors, if you couple that with machine learning, and all machine learning is identifying an asset's normal operating characteristics, such that when that asset's operation starts deviating from that normal characteristics, then they can identify issues very early on before they become problems. When you add advanced analytics, facility managers can look forward to understanding now what the components are involved, as well as what is the issue. It's not just that you've got a pump that's starting to act up. What is it? Okay, so for example, using IoT, and I'll talk about the pump and the motor, the sensor readings can really indicate the functional failure. All that is that parts of the component is still functioning, but it's starting to fail. And then the analytics can indicate the issue. Is it a bearing? Is it a seal? Is it an impeller? Or really, is it the motor? Maybe the motor alignment's bad. Don't know. But starting with these analytics and machine learning, we can start understanding what these items are. And then once we understand those issues, then we can not only create alerts, but provide a time frame to impact. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you were a facility manager to know that this pump is going to go out in 48 hours versus 4 hours? And that gives you time to make informed decisions as to when you need to initiate action, and also make sure the parts and the labor contractors are available to deal with it. And these types of technologies go a long way, really a long way, to keeping your facilities operating at optimal performance and containing the cost. And you'll see this continually unfolding. We're talking about smart cities now, where the cities are actually putting instrumentation, what we call sensors, even down on their traffic lights, so that they know when the traffic lights are out before someone has to call in, and automatically change traffic routing and things of that nature. So we're seeing this stuff come about very rapidly. So it's something that facility managers really should keep an eye on.
Wow. Do you have any, resources or ideas of places people can go to look for more information if they're interested in learning more?
Sure. There's a lot of things out there. Some of the professional associations like SMRP and even IFMA has some things out there as well. And then you can go to several of the larger software companies, as well as Infor and GE and those guys, and they have a lot of information there. Gartner has a lot of information, as well as the ARC Advisory Group. So a lot of your industry analysts have the information as well.
All right, great. And I know that in the article that you wrote for us, there were also some resources in there if people would like to get more information. Mike, was there anything that we didn't talk about that you kind of wanted to add in and speak about?
I think we
covered a lot of ground. We surely did. Okay. Well, Mike, I really want to thank you for joining us, and I want to invite everyone listening to read more about condition assessment in the March-April issue of FMJ. You can visit ifma.org/FMJ to read that issue and to read back issues and learn more about IoT and condition assessment and all these issues we've talked about today. Mike, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thanks. Thank you for being here.